It wasn't a single cataclysmic event that broke the surface of our marriage. It was more like the slow, insidious creep of a hairline crack in a dam, a fracture so fine you could miss it for years, right up until the moment the world is washed away in a torrent of cold, hard truth. For 15 years, I had believed we were building an empire together. He was the visionary, the charismatic architect of our financial success, a man who could command a boardroom with a quiet word and a confident smile. I was his partner, his strategist, the one who managed the intricate details of our life and our investments, ensuring the foundation of our shared dream was solid granite. His mother was the matriarch, a woman of formidable will and polished elegance who saw her son as an extension of her own ambition. I had always thought her constant presence in our lives, her unsolicited advice on everything from our stock portfolio to the color of our dining room walls, was a sign of her deep, if somewhat overbearing, affection. I saw it as the price of admission for marrying the golden son of a powerful woman. I now understand I was never family to her. I was merely the temporary custodian of her most valuable asset. The first sign, the first microscopic fissure in the edifice of our life, appeared in a manila envelope from our accountant. It was tax season, a time of year I usually managed with meticulous precision. Inside was a form, a K-1 detailing partnership income from a company I had never heard of, Apex Strategic Holdings, LLC. The income allocated to him was substantial, yet it was money I had never seen deposited into our joint accounts. When I asked him about it, his reaction was a masterpiece of casual dismissal. He waved a hand, his eyes not even leaving the financial news on his tablet. Oh, it's just a small side venture, a bit of speculative real estate with some old contacts. Terribly boring stuff, all paperwork and holding patterns. It's structured that way for tax efficiency. Don't worry about it. His explanation was smooth, delivered with the practiced ease of a man used to simplifying complex matters. But something about it felt wrong. He had never kept a venture from me, no matter how small or boring. We were transparent, a team. His refusal to elaborate, his framing of my question as a needless worry, was not his usual style. It was a door being closed gently but firmly in my face. That closed door became an obsession. My mind, trained to find patterns and anomalies in financial data, couldn't let it go. I told myself it was due diligence, the responsible thing to do. But deep down, a cold seed of suspicion had been planted. I started my own quiet investigation, a shadow operation conducted in the late hours of the night when he was asleep, his steady breathing a stark contrast to the frantic beating of my own heart. I started with public records. A simple search for Apex Strategic Holdings, LLC, brought up its articles of organization. My blood ran cold when I saw the names of the managing members. There were only two, my husband and my mother-in-law. My breath caught in my chest. Why would his mother be his partner in a boring side venture he'd never mentioned? The woman who claimed to find financial talk tedious, who professed to leave all such matters to the men in her life. It made no sense, unless the purpose of the company wasn't business, unless its purpose was secrecy. I dug deeper, my nights blurring into a sleepless haze of caffeine and creeping dread. I hired a forensic accountant, an old college friend I swore to secrecy, and gave her the limited information I had. Together, we began to unravel a conspiracy so cold and calculated it felt like something out of a spy novel, not my own life. Apex Strategic Holdings was a ghost. It had a registered address which turned out to be a P.O. box. It had no website, no employees, no public presence whatsoever. It was a black hole designed to absorb money and light. My friend, through means I didn't ask about, managed to gain access to the company's banking records. What I saw on my screen felt like a physical blow. For the past 3 years, my husband had been systematically siphoning money from our shared investment accounts. He would liquidate stocks, sell off mutual funds, and then, through a series of complex transfers designed to look like legitimate business expenses or capital investments, he would wire the money directly into the accounts of Apex Strategic Holdings. The amounts were staggering. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions, the money I had helped earn, the nest egg I had carefully managed, our future. It was all being funneled into this corporate shell he controlled with his mother. The scheme was diabolically simple. The assets held by Apex, and there were many, were not marital property. The company owned a portfolio of untraceable bonds, a condo in a ski resort town, a collection of modern art, and a significant amount of offshore investments. In the event of a divorce, a topic he had begun to casually mention with increasing frequency, citing friends of ours who were growing apart, I would be entitled to half of our joint assets. But our joint accounts were being systematically drained. I would be left with half of a depleted checking account and a mountain of shared debt, while he and his mother would walk away with a meticulously curated fortune. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a corporate takeover of my life. They had audited my future and decided to write me off as a loss. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. but grief is a luxury you can't afford when you're at war. And as I stared at the flowcharts of my own financial ruin, the grief began to burn away, calcifying into something else. It became a cold, clear, and unadulterated rage, a rage so pure it was almost peaceful. I knew then I wouldn't confront him. There would be no tearful accusations, no dramatic showdowns. To do so would be to play a game on their terms, a game of emotional manipulation and gaslighting that I would surely lose. He would call me hysterical. His mother would call me ungrateful. They would close ranks, lawyer up, and complete their financial assassination. No, I would not play their game. I would play their game better. They had used the soulless, impersonal tools of corporate finance to betray me. I would use those same tools to destroy them. They had created a fake company to launder our money. I would create a fake identity to take it all back. They thought I was a wife, a partner they could simply write off the balance sheet. They were about to learn that I was a far more dangerous kind of asset, an unrecorded liability with a score to settle. My war would be fought in the shadows, on encrypted servers and through untraceable accounts. They would never even see me coming. The first step in becoming a ghost is to erase the person you were. For the next month, I lived a life of quiet duality. To my husband and mother-in-law, I was the devoted, slightly oblivious wife, a little more withdrawn perhaps, which they likely attributed to the natural ebbs and flows of a long marriage. I played my part with an Oscar-worthy performance, smiling at dinner parties, discussing vacation plans I knew we'd never take, and listening patiently to my mother-in-law's thinly veiled criticisms about my life choices. But when the house fell silent each night, another woman emerged. I created her from scratch, a digital phantom born of firewalls and encrypted networks. Her name was Anya Petrova. The name had a certain hardness to it, an Eastern European edge that suggested old money and a discreet, no-nonsense approach to business. Anya was a high-net-worth consultant, a specialist in navigating the murky waters of international asset management and offshore investments. She had no social media footprint, no public history. Her existence was confined to a secure, encrypted email service, a series of burner phones, and a meticulously crafted professional profile on a niche networking site for global financiers. I spent weeks studying the language of their world, learning the jargon of leveraged buyouts, mezzanine financing, and special-purpose vehicles. I fabricated a history for Anya, a track record of spectacular, discreet successes for a clientele of Russian oligarchs and shadowy tech billionaires. Anya Petrova was the kind of person my husband and his mother would be unable to resist, a key to a world of even greater, more secretive wealth. The next step was to make contact. I couldn't approach Apex Strategic Holdings directly, it would be too suspicious. I had to make them come to me. I knew from my research that my husband had a particular interest in the volatile but potentially lucrative world of rare earth mineral investments. It was a high-risk, high-reward game that appealed to his vanity and his greed. Through Anya's professional networking profile, I seeded a rumor. I created a phantom deal, a supposed opportunity to get in on the ground floor of a new mining operation in Kazakhstan with exclusive access to dysprosium deposits, a critical component in modern electronics. I crafted a prospectus that was a work of art, filled with convincing geological surveys I'd paid a freelance geologist to create, forged government permits, and wildly optimistic but vaguely plausible profit projections. I made sure this prospectus found its way to a handful of select brokers, one of whom I knew had a professional connection to my husband. It was casting a line into the water, baiting the hook with the one thing I knew they couldn't resist, the prospect of a secret, untraceable windfall. It took less than a week. An email arrived in Anya Petrova's encrypted inbox. The sender's address was anonymous, but the language, the specific blend of arrogance and feigned nonchalance, was unmistakably my husband's. He was making a discreet inquiry on behalf of a private holding company regarding the Kazakhstan opportunity. He was interested. The game was on. Our correspondence was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. I, as Anya, was aloof, almost dismissive. I made it clear that I only worked with a very select clientele, that this opportunity was highly sensitive, and that I had very little time for amateurs. The more I pushed him away, the more desperate he became. His emails grew more frequent, more detailed, revealing more than he should have about the financial structure of Apex. He was trying to impress me, to prove that his little shell company was a worthy player. His mother's influence was evident in the background. I could almost hear her voice in his increasingly aggressive negotiating tactics, the push for better terms, for more control. They were a team, a piranha and its pilot fish, circling what they believed to be their next meal. I let them believe they were winning. I reluctantly agreed to consider them as primary investors. I sent them pages of complex legal documents, partnership agreements, and non-disclosure forms that I had drafted with the help of an online legal service. documents that were dense, intimidating, and filled with clauses that subtly gave my persona Anya Petrova increasing levels of authority over the proposed joint venture. The centerpiece of my plan was the creation of a new corporate entity, a special purpose vehicle that would be used to facilitate the investment. This new company, registered in a jurisdiction known for its impenetrable corporate secrecy laws, would be jointly controlled by Apex Strategic Holdings and a holding company registered to Anya Petrova. This was the trap. For the deal to proceed, for the funds to be transferred to the mining operation, they would need to be moved from Apex's accounts into the new company's accounts. And to facilitate this complex international transaction, swiftly and securely, bypassing inconvenient regulatory checks, Anya Petrova would require temporary but absolute signatory authority over the new company's primary account. I presented this as a non-negotiable term, a standard operating procedure for a deal of this magnitude and sensitivity. My husband hesitated. It was a huge risk, giving a stranger that level of control. But my mother-in-law, blinded by the dollar signs in the fabricated prospectus, pushed him. I could picture their conversations, her voice dripping with avarice, urging him not to let this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip away because of his cowardice. Greed, I had learned, is the most powerful anesthetic, dulling the senses to all signs of danger. They agreed. The documents were signed electronically, the resolutions passed. From my small, dark home office, thousands of miles from the non-existent mine in Kazakhstan, I, Anya Petrova, was granted control over their financial destiny. I was inside. I had become the viper in their nest, coiled and ready to strike. The final phase of my plan required them to liquidate their remaining assets and consolidate all of their capital. I told them the window of opportunity was closing, that the Kazakh government was getting nervous, and that we needed to move immediately. I watched in real time as the last of our marital money, the final remnants of our shared life, poured into the Apex accounts. Then I watched them transfer every last dollar into the new shared account over which I held the keys. The account balance was breathtaking, a testament to the scale of their long and patient theft. They had done all the hard work for me, bundling their entire stolen fortune into one convenient location. They sent me a final, triumphant email. The funds are in place. Proceed, they thought they were on the verge of their greatest triumph. They had no idea they had just handed me the detonator. The moment of execution felt both terrifyingly real and strangely distant, as if I were watching a movie of my own life. My hands were steady on the keyboard, my breathing even. The house was silent, my husband sleeping soundly in the next room, dreaming, no doubt, of rare earth minerals and a future free of me. On my encrypted laptop, the bank account of our joint venture glowed with a balance that represented 15 years of my life, my work, my trust, all stolen and repurposed into their private treasure chest. They had sent the email authorizing me to proceed just after midnight. I gave them 2 hours. 2 hours for them to fall asleep, secure in their victory. 2 hours for me to prepare the final, irreversible act. My plan was a cascade, a series of pre-programmed transactions that would trigger one after another in a matter of seconds. It was a digital demolition. The first transaction was the largest. It moved 90% of the funds from our joint venture account to a secondary holding company I had established under Anya Petrova's name in another secretive jurisdiction. From there, the money was instantly split and routed through a dizzying maze of cryptocurrency exchanges. It was converted into Monero, a privacy-focused crypto known for being virtually untraceable, and then deposited into a cold storage wallet, a physical device disconnected from the internet to which only I held the key. The remaining 10% was for chaos. I wired it in small, erratic amounts to dozens of flagged accounts and organizations on international watch lists, charities linked to rogue states, and online gambling sites in countries with no extradition treaties. This wasn't about keeping that last bit of money, it was about poisoning the well. It would ensure that any investigation into the disappearance of the funds would immediately trigger red flags with financial regulators and law enforcement agencies across the globe. It would tie the source account, and by extension, Apex Strategic Holdings and its owners, to suspected money laundering and terrorism financing. I was not just taking their money, I was salting the earth of their financial lives so that nothing would ever grow there again. When the final transfer was confirmed and the balance of their grand venture read zero, I closed the laptop. The entire operation had taken less than 45 seconds. I sat in the darkness for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on me. There was no elation, no triumphant surge of adrenaline, just a profound, hollow stillness. I had won. I had taken back what was mine, and I had destroyed them with the very tools they had used against me. I went into our bedroom. He was still asleep, a faint smile on his face. I took a single sheet of paper from the printer. On it, I typed a single sentence. Then I placed it on his pillow next to his oblivious, sleeping head. My suitcase had been packed for weeks. I took only my personal belongings, my new passport under a new name, and the small, offline wallet that now contained my future. I walked out of the house I had helped build, out of the life I had once cherished, and I did not look back. I was at the airport when he would have woken up. I can picture the scene with perfect clarity, him reaching over, finding my side of the bed empty. The flicker of annoyance, perhaps, before his eyes fell on the note. He would have picked it up, confused. It wouldn't have been a letter full of rage or heartbreak. It simply said, "Boring, wasn't it?" The confusion would have turned to panic. He would have grabbed his phone, his laptop, trying to log into the bank accounts. He would have seen the impossible number 0. He would have called his mother, his voice cracking, and together they would have stared into the digital abyss where their fortune once resided. Their panic would soon turn to sheer terror when the first calls started. Not from me, not from lawyers, but from their bank's fraud department, from federal regulators, from investigators wanting to know why their private holding company had been wiring money to blacklisted entities all over the world. They were trapped. They couldn't report the bulk of the money stolen without revealing their own scheme to defraud me in a divorce. They couldn't explain the toxic transfers without implicating themselves in far more serious crimes. Their own secrecy, the very thing that was meant to be their shield, had become their cage. I watched their downfall from a distance, from a small apartment overlooking a turquoise sea thousands of miles away. I read the news of a prominent local businessman and his mother being investigated for financial fraud and tax evasion. I saw pictures of them leaving a courthouse, their faces gray and haggard, the polished veneer stripped away to reveal the grasping, desperate people they truly were. They lost everything. The business, the reputation, their friends. They were forced to sell their homes to pay for lawyers in a battle they could never win. They had been bankrupted not just financially, but morally, publicly, and completely. My new life is quiet. I am not Anya Petrova, nor am I the woman who was once a trusting wife. I am someone new, someone forged in the fire of a great betrayal. I did not just get revenge. I performed a corporate restructuring of my own soul, cutting away the toxic assets and leveraging my strengths to build something new, something that belongs only to me. They thought they could liquidate my life, but they just taught me how to be a raider. Thanks for listening to this story. Now I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Share this story with your friends and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Revenge Laura for more episodes.